If you're choosing a factory based on price and MOQ, you're only seeing 10% of what actually matters. My name is Dwayne Scott, and I've been working in China since 2013. I design supply chain systems that turn Chinese factories into operational assets for brands. Most people base sourcing decisions on whether a factory can hit their target price and MOQ. And yes, that's a critical step, but it's not the foundational step. It's only the part you can see. And like an iceberg, 90% of a factory's stability is under the surface. At the top of the funnel is you. What is your mindset? What is your intention? Because this shapes how you interpret everything below. You see, most people, they approach sourcing like a consumer. They're looking for a deal. But the way I've come to see it, sourcing isn't just about buying. It's about building a system that can support your business and your brand over time. So what you're really doing is planting a seed, building roots, and growing a supplier that can hold when things get tested. So the question I tend to ask is, are you optimizing for a cheaper price and willing to trade that off for quality or production capability? Or are you trying to build something that can actually hold? That decision usually shapes everything that follows. Now, let's move on to the next layer, a fair price, but with a different lens. I don't usually start with price. I try to arrive at it because in most cases, price reflects the factory's systems, their people, capability, reliability. So instead of asking, what's the cheapest price? I found it's more useful to ask, what is a fair price for a production system that won't break under pressure? Because cheap upfront often becomes expensive later, especially when what's underneath has no structure. One question I come back to is this: is it better to find a fair factory at a great price or a great factory at a fair price? Personally, I tend to go with the great factory at a fair price. Why? Because that's where you can start building something real and investing into a supplier that can support your brand for the long term. Okay, the next layer is delivery time. I'm usually looking at fit. Does the factory's timeline actually work for my business? I like to align this with a sales forecast over the next 3 to 6 months. So one of the first things I'll ask is, what is your production lead time? Typically, you'll hear around 45 days. But sometimes stronger factories, especially those with long-term clients, will say 90 days because they prioritize existing relationships first. So now it becomes a judgment call. You may have found a great factory at a fair price, but if the delivery time doesn't work for your business, it might not be the right fit. And that's okay, because this layer is really about finding a setup that actually converts in practice. And at the same time, you're also getting a feel for, can the factory commit and consistently deliver on time? Because that's where future orders turn into something repeatable and seamless. Right. Now let's go even lower, another layer deep. Now we look at production capability, but not just at the surface. From what I've seen, capability isn't just machines and buildings. It's the systems behind the operation. So I start looking for structure. Do they have a defined QC process? Who is responsible? How often do they inspect? Do they even have a reject system? Will they accept a third-party inspection, like an AQL? How about a structured sales team, a material ordering system, inbound inspection checks? Clear roles on the production floor and a production manager who is accountable. And most importantly, what tends to happen when something goes wrong? Let's say there's a defect mid-production. Does the factory take responsibility to fix it at their cost? Or does it become my problem? Will they accept a contract and sign it? Because you see, in practice, real capability shows up and how problems are handled when they appear. and they will appear, right? This is manufacturing. Now, let's get closer to what actually matters day to day. Many people think a factory is simply machines and workers, but that's not really what you interact with. For you, the factory is a sales agent. I discovered that your sales agent is the factory. This is a person managing your order from start to finish. And from my 13 years of experience, most breakdowns happen here. Not because the factory cannot produce, but because communication breaks down, or the sales agent isn't technically strong enough to solve problems. So I tend to watch for a few things. Response time. Do they reply within 24 hours? And their technical understanding? Can they explain how your product is made with ease? What about communications? Can we actually understand each other? If communication feels difficult, I take that very seriously. There are plenty of strong factories that communicate clearly in English. I also like to check, is the sales office inside the factory, or are they disconnected from the operation? Because in the end, people do business with people they like and trust. And I do pay attention to my intuition here, because a capable factory with a weak operator can still create a weak experience, right? Now we're gonna go another layer deeper, a factory visit. Can I visit a factory and are they open to it, let's say in the next 24 hours? I'll ask them, because transparency tells you a lot and a real operation has nothing to hide. Even if you don't go, it's their willingness that matters, because hesitation usually points to something you're not comfortable showing. And finally, the foundation. Who is the big boss, the Lao Ban? Because this is the person who ultimately controls outcomes, not the agent, not the process, it's the owner. So I want to understand who they are, how they think, whether I can reach them if I need to. Because when something goes wrong, this is where decisions are made. And if you know them, you're building a relationship asset, something that adds mass to your iceberg and strengthens everything underneath. Now, you're not just placing orders, you're working with a system. You've built an asset here, or on your way to building an asset, right? So this is how I tend to approach it. I don't start at the bottom, I start at the very top and then work my way down. And over time, you start to notice a shift. The wrong factories, they naturally filter out. And the right ones, they start to feel different. You get excited because you can feel that they're more structured, more predictable. You start to feel alignment, a sense of trust in the process. And that's when you know you're making real progress. You're building with intention, not hesitation. And that's really the shift. Sometimes you don't need more effort. You just need clarity and a better map, better mindset, better approach, and to know that you're making progress, right? Okay, if you've enjoyed this video, how about checking out some more of our China sourcing strategies? I've got a good one, a trading company versus a factory up here.